Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games and part 1 of this How to Play Horus Heresy series. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll be taking you through the introduction and the general principles of the game. In this series you'll see all the basic rules that you need to play your first game of Horus Heresy. This video will focus on the introduction and the general principles, and then the videos that follow will cover the turn sequence, reactions, the different phases including shooting, assault and morale phase, and those 6 videos in total will give you everything you need to play your first game. Right, let's get started with the common principles and game mechanics. Let's look at measuring distances, and you can use the measuring stick provided or a tape measure. And the measurement is always in inches, and you measure from the closest point on one base to the closest point on the other base, and this can be between models or even terrain features. The dice for the game will be a 6-sided dice known as a D6. Sometimes though you'll be asked to roll a D3. When you need to do this, simply roll a D6 and halve the number rounding up. So a 1 or 2 would be a 1, 3 or 4 would be a 2, and a 5 or 6 would be a 3. Sometimes you'll be asked to roll a D66, and to do this you roll 2 dice, one after the other. The first dice will count as the tens, and the second dice will count as the units. So if you roll a 3 on the first dice and a 5 on the second, your D66 result will be a 35. You'll also be using a scatter dice, and this will be mostly used to determine a random direction for things like blast weapons. Often throughout the game you'll have to modify your dice rolls. Now, a roll of an unmodified 1 will always fail, and a roll of an unmodified 6 will always succeed, unless another rule states otherwise. Any modifications that you need to add to your dice roll will be written as D6 plus 1 or D6 plus 2. In some situations, the rules allow you to re-roll a dice, and the second roll that you make counts even if it means a worse result than the first. If you've rolled a 2d6 and you want to re-roll it, you must re-roll all of the dice. Some rules will require you to roll off, so each player rolls a dice and the player who rolls the highest result wins the roll-off. That takes care of the dice, but now let's have a look at blast markers and templates. Some weapons are so powerful that they don't just target a single model or unit, but have an area effect. To represent the area of effect, we'll use a small blast marker with a 3-inch diameter, a large blast marker for a 5-inch diameter, or a template, which is the teardrop shaped template, roughly 8 inches long. To work out the number of hits, you'll normally hold the whole of the marker or template over the head of a particular model. The weapons will give you the rules and directions you need to follow when using these markers and templates. Sometimes you'll need to scatter a unit, model, or a counter, and so to do this you place the object on the battlefield as instructed by the rule. Then roll a scatter dice and 2d6 to determine the direction and distance of scatter in inches. If a hit is rolled on the scatter dice, the object does not move. Leave it in place and resolve the remainder of the rule. Now let's take a look at characteristic tests, and sometimes a model will be called upon to take a characteristic test. To do it, you just follow these steps. Number 1, roll a d6 and compare the result to the relevant characteristic in the model's profile. If the result is equal to or less than the number in the profile, the test is passed. If the result is greater than the number in the model's profile, the test has been failed and the model faces the consequences as detailed in the rule that prompted the test. You'll often also have to take leadership tests, and this has got a similar procedure. First, you'll roll 2d6 and compare the model's leadership characteristic. If the result is equal to or less than the leadership characteristic, that test has been passed, but if the result is greater than the leadership characteristic, the test has been failed. If a unit has to take a leadership test and it includes models with different leadership values, always use the highest leadership from among them. Let's have a quick look at line of sight next, and we'll be covering this in lots of detail in the shooting phase, but the line of sight rules for Horus Heresy are really good, simple but effective. For one model to have line of sight to another, you must be able to trace a straight, unblocked line from its body to any part of the target's body. Now, this doesn't include a model's weapon, banner, or other ornament that they are carrying. As well as being in line of sight, many rules will call for models to be in range. To be within range of any given point or model, any part of the base of the model, or hull in the case of vehicles, must be within a number of inches stated by the rule in question. We'll also cover this in detail in the shooting video. Now we've gone through the general principles, let's have a look at the 10 characteristics that describe the various attributes of our different models. Here we've got a character profile, and first of all we have M, and this is movement. This represents the number of inches the model can move across the battlefield. WS represents the weapon skill, and this defines the close combat skill a warrior possesses. The higher the characteristic, the more likely the model is to hit an opponent in close combat. BS is ballistic skill, and this shows how accurate a warrior is with ranged weapons. S is for strength, and this gives a measure of how physically capable a warrior is. T is for toughness, and this is a measure of a model's ability to resist physical damage and pain. W is for wounds, and this represents how much damage a model can take before it dies. I is for initiative, and this represents the swiftness of a model. A is for attacks, and this is the number of attacks a model may make during close combat. LD is for leadership, and this reveals how courageous, determined, and self-controlled a model is. And finally, SV, and this represents the armor save, and this is the warrior's chance to avoid harm when it is struck or shot. Some characteristics will have a 0 or a dash, and this means they have no ability in that field. As well as its characteristics profile, a unit will have a points value, a unit composition, a unit type, war gear, special rules, and options, and this will all come into play as we go through the rules in the next videos in the series. Now we've covered the general principles of the game, it's time to look at the turn summary and reactions. So come and join me for part 2 of this series where we'll go through all of those things in detail. If you're finding this video series helpful and you'd like to support the channel, then there's loads of ways you can do that. You can join my Patreon, buy a copy of my book Weekend Warriors, or leave a super thanks down below. If you're interested in picking up a copy of the Age of Darkness box set for yourself, or any of the additional sets or rulebooks, then I'll put some links in the description, and there you can save up to 20% on the retail price, and you also help support the channel too, as I get a small commission from every sale made. I'd like to say a huge thank you to this month's sponsors and supporters who've made this series possible by sponsoring the channel or sending products for me to use. I'd also like to say thank you to my Patreon supporters for your ongoing support throughout the year. It's just amazing. Thanks so much for watching. If you did like it, please hit the like button, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.